Welcome into Weather Extra. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Jillian Johnson. We made it through a very cold and a dangerous stretch of Arctic weather. Millions of Americans got slammed with freezing rain, feet of snow, and life-threatening cold last week as multiple waves of Arctic air traveled out of Canada and across the nation. Here's a look back at the wild week of winter weather here in the U.S. Unrelenting winter storms swept across the nation, killing at least 40 people in multiple states since Friday, January 12th. Last weekend and into the middle of the work week, round one of Arctic air and wintry weather swept through the nation. Over 120 million people were under wind chill warnings stretching border to border across the U.S. at the beginning of the week. Some areas across the northern parts of the nation saw wind chill values greater than 50 below zero. Here in Texas, brutally cold temperatures did settle in, with everyone dropping down into the freezer, even some Texans dealing with sub-zero wind chills too. Down closer to the coast, the city of Houston was slammed with icy conditions, making way for very hazardous travel and causing numerous accidents around the city. The wintry weather stretched further east along the rest of the Gulf Coast as well, with parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and even the Florida Panhandle all seeing some form of wintry precipitation. And take a look at this. In Bolton, Mississippi, a water tower overflowed when a key shutoff sensor froze, icing over everything below. The storm system would race east and bring extreme cold and lake-effect snow through the Great Lakes and Northeast regions. New York City and Philadelphia both saw an inch of snow on Tuesday for the first time in 700 days. But as one winter storm exited through the East Coast, another was moving through the West Coast. Across the Pacific Northwest, a historic ice storm left more than 200,000 without power. Ice accumulation reached a tenth of an inch to 3/4 of an inch across parts of Oregon and Washington. The ice was so heavy that power lines and trees were snapping all over the region. 3 people died in Oregon after a falling tree branch draped a live power line across their SUV. The storm system would continue racing east midweek and into this weekend, causing another nationwide winter weather event. Another round of heavy snow and very cold wind chills were expected across the Central Plains and East Coast into this weekend. Down south in Texas, thankfully the second blast of cold air wasn't as cold as the first, and this round didn't bring us any wintry precipitation. But that wasn't the case across other parts of the nation. Disruptive snow and freezing rain would plow through the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Snow totals range from 1 to 5 inches on top of the snow that already fell earlier in the week. Thankfully, though, there are signs that there's an end to this frigid weather, and temperatures could climb back above average for much of the nation heading into the new week, melting away those winter blues. Let's take a deeper dive into what Central Texas saw during the past week's historic freeze. At 8:51 in the evening, Saturday, January 13th through 10:51 Wednesday morning, January 17th, the temperatures at Waco Regional were at 32 or lower. That is 86 consecutive hours where temperatures were in the freezer. Now you're probably thinking 86 hours is a long time, and it is. It's just nowhere near our longest streak of below freezing temperatures. As you can see, this event this year did in fact beat last year's event in January and early February by just 2 hours. But this year's streak is still no match to February 2021. Again, this year we went 86 straight hours this event, but back in 2021, 205 consecutive hours. We would need to have gone 5.5 more days just to tie that record. One of the most dangerous impacts from the historic freeze were the dangerously cold wind chills that were found across Central Texas. Throughout last week, there were a few times where our wind chill values dropped below zero. For more on what wind chill is and why it can be so dangerous, here's meteorologist Sean Bellafiore.
Those brutal cold wind chills last week, of course, made it feel extra cold outside. But the reason why we talk a lot about wind chills whenever it gets brutally cold is because of the impacts it has to our bodies. Now, before we get into what wind chill is, we're going to talk about how it's calculated. It's a complex mathematical formula, but we calculate the wind chill at about 5 feet above the ground based on a human face model. Whenever it's cold outside, the face is usually the most exposed area of skin on our bodies. And believe it or not, we don't calculate wind chills when the temperature is above 50 degrees or the wind speeds are below 3 miles per hour. Now, you, my friend, are a radiator of heat. Every single day, every hour of the day, we give off heat to keep our bodies at that 98.6 degrees. Whenever there is no wind outside, that layer of radiated heat stays very close to our body. So if you've ever been outside in cold temperatures without any sort of wind, it typically doesn't feel too bad. A 20-degree temperature with no wind gives us a wind chill of 20 degrees. But the second the wind starts blowing, it takes that radiated heat from our bodies, which is acting kind of like a layer of insulation, and pushes it away. So whenever we have a 20-degree temperature with a 20-mile-per-hour wind, that radiated heat that gets pushed away makes it feel like to our skin 4 degrees. And of course, the lower those wind chills go, the quicker hypothermia could set in. Reporting in the studio, I'm Sean Bellafury.
Thanks, Sean. Well, we know many things are impacted when temperatures drop below freezing, and experts work hard to ensure people are doing their part to keep livestock and crops safe. And you may be wondering how freezing conditions impact agriculture. Well, for more on that, here's Morgan Riddell.
Agriculture and climate experts say there's a big difference between this year's hard freeze and 2021. But still, it's a trend.
It's kind of unusual to have it that cold basically 3 years out of 4, which we just did.
When faced with the 2021 weather, ranchers had to make some changes.
If there's like a widespread ice storm, that can sort of block access to normal grazing, so that it may be necessary to provide supplemental feed and hay and that sort of thing. Luckily
for ranchers and farmers,
we didn't have much ice around here this time around, so I don't think that was a major problem. And any cattle that survived 2021 ought to be able to survive this cold air outbreak. There's really no important crops in the area that are growing right now. The planting season starts in another month or two, so no direct impacts.
Unlucky for them, keeping up with livestock is definitely harder during the hard freeze.
You have to make sure that your livestock have food, they have water, and so your water lines freeze up, your ponds and tanks freeze. You got to get that ice chopped out so they can get to the water. And so you've got that whole set of things, and it's cold out there.
In Bryan, Morgan Rydell, News 3.
Scientists say 2023 was the hottest in at least 125,000 years. And coming up after the break, we learn why scientists are sounding the alarm as the world inches closer to the threshold beyond which humans and ecosystems will struggle to adapt. We'll have much more on this on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. I know it may be hard to imagine after going through that cold stretch, but not too long ago, we were living through the hottest year on record. The world is now dangerously close to hitting a critical climate threshold set by nearly 200 countries in the 2015 Paris Agreement. CNN's chief climate correspondent Bill Weir has the details.
1.48 degrees Celsius. That was the amount of global warming in 2023. 2/100ths of a degree away from that pivotal number of 1.5 that the world agreed should be the upper limits of man-made global warming. But we're there. 2023, as a lot of people felt it around the world, just was undeniable. Not only did it break previous records, the hottest year ever in 2016, shattered them, obliterated them. The most northern latitudes you can see on the map there, up in Canada, there are a good 3 and 4 degrees of warming much faster than the rest of the world, so it is not even. If we look at the global surface temperatures going back 57 years, it goes back to 1967, my birth year. This is my life and temperature graphs here. And 2023, you can see how that bar on the right is so much higher than anywhere else. Usually these records are broken by just hundredths of a degree because you're talking about so much area, so much mass, so much time. But 23 was deadly special in so many ways. And then as we look at through the year, as the temperatures bounced around that 1.5 line there, we dipped above in March, came back down. But as you can see, the temperatures around the world hit that 1.5 threshold and stayed there for most of the back end of the year, even going above 2 degrees of global warming for a couple of days in November. That has never happened before. For the first time ever, you can lay 2023's calendar over a calendar of 1850 to 1900, and every day was a full degree warmer than those before. And this doesn't even take into account the estimated millions of species of plants and animals that could go extinct by 2050. Bill Weir, CNN New York.
Bill also has a look back on the year 2023, a year filled with deadly wildfires, devastating floods, and soaring temperatures. He joins us again to recap last year on how our climate has changed and what scientists have been saying.
Science tells us that 2023 was the hottest Earth has been in 120,000 years, shattering records in ways that are hard to comprehend and creating events that frankly exceed our imaginations. Who could have imagined 31 straight days over 110 degrees, even in Phoenix? The rate of heat deaths in Maricopa County has climbed 25% a year for 2 years running. And desert cities everywhere are realizing the need to build cooling into public policy. But in the same mega drought, who could have imagined rivers in the sky dumping so much water on California that it brought Tulare Lake back from the dead? If you'd stood here for the last couple of generations, you'd be watching the sunset over dusty fields of cotton or alfalfa or pistachio trees. And now it is waterfront property. This new age of water whiplash means too much H2O or never enough across huge swaths of the nation, forcing farmers and water managers to reimagine how every drop is used or wasted. This is the first of what will be many barges that can bring about 500,000 gallons of fresh water at a time. 2023 forced the economy to reckon with a Mississippi River too low to move food like it used to, and too weak to keep Gulf saltwater from creeping into drinking and irrigation supply. And when West Maui was the lush Venice of the Pacific, no one imagined how generations of water theft and invasive grasses would turn the capital of the Hawaiian kingdom to tinder, or the hurricane winds that would blowtorch the precious town of Lahaina into ash in the deadliest American wildfire in modern times. It's just unrecognizable. One of the most charming, beloved port cities anywhere in the world is just scorched like a bomb went off. But 23 also brought lessons in resilience.
There you go, man, right there, over your neck. Keep you nice and cool.
From people like Archie Kalepa, the Hall of Fame lifeguard, who is helping lead West Maui back from the ashes with love and aloha. And Heidi Lang, who lost everything to California's deadliest fire 5 years ago, but decided to stay and rebuild paradise.
My community and my neighbors and my friends and my church and my job was all still here. So my little village is here in paradise.
Heidi and her neighbors are learning from tragedy and rebuilding stronger than ever.
These are aluminum frame, tempered glass.
And as disaster forces us to reimagine how to live with nature transformed, breakthroughs in clean energy also abound by the day. And you only need a tiny little bit of fuel.
That's right, yeah.
Scientists at the National Ignition Facility have repeated their success in nuclear fusion, nudging us closer to a world powered by little man-made stars and boxes that use salt water for fuel and never melt down.
There's still many technology jumps that we need to make, but that's what makes it so exciting.
But even if fusion takes generations, the two cheapest forms of energy in human history are already onshore wind and sun. And with a surge of investment in clean energy storage, startups like Antora hope to power entire factories with thermal batteries like this.
1,600 degrees Celsius. So this is hotter than the melting point of steel, and it's just a couple feet inside that shell.
I had a hard time explaining to my kids what nuclear fusion is. But this is just a hot rock in a box.
Exactly.
So 2023 also reminded us to expand our imaginations, not just for the worst that can happen, but the best.
The transition is inevitable. It's going to happen. We have the tools we need. We just need to deploy them.
Coming up after the break, we take a look at this week's Degrees of Science with Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor, who has more on how you at home can help out with a mega movie on the upcoming total solar eclipse happening in April. Find out how your help is needed right after this.
The project y'all are working on is the Eclipse mega movie. What exactly is that project?
So the Eclipse mega movie is a project that was prepared for the previous eclipse. And the idea is to have people, normal people with cameras and phones, to send us all the images that you have to create a movie. So the basic idea is that if we want to do science of the sun, if you take a picture, you cannot see different changes in the dynamics of the solar corona. You can see it like this. If you take a picture of one car in the freeway, you will never see how the car crashed. But if you take multiple of those, then you will see how the car does crash. This is the principle of the Eclipse Mega Movie. You want just to see how the sun changes, for example, from Texas to the other side of the United States.
What would you say to people that are like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this, or, like I said, I'm not a scientist, but, how much does it help y'all to have more and more people to be involved in this project to provide y'all pictures?
Well, I would say that, I'm not an expert on eclipse. I will try to do this. And I always thought that I'm not good doing science, and I'm here doing science. Everybody does science all days. Every time we go to the kitchen and boil something, that's science, that's chemistry. The more pictures that we get is better, because we can minimize the errors that are between different cameras. And that's the important thing of having a very good sample of data. So the more data that we take, the errors are going to be lower, and all this stuff that we can deduce and investigate from it is higher.
People know of the sun, but some people may not know exactly what the corona is and what you are able to see during eclipse. So what is the corona of the sun?
The corona is the outer layer of the sun. So if you can see that it's a diffuse kind of gas material that is around the sun. We cannot see it because the density is very low. When there is an eclipse, the sun is the surface of the sun, the photosphere is being covered by the moon, and we can see faint stuff. So you can see this diffuse structure on top of it.
So you were talking about how it's important to see the sun throughout the total eclipse, the path that it goes. How important is it for y'all to compare the way the corona looks in 2024 compared to the way it looked in 2017 with that former eclipse?
Yeah, that's important. It tells how the magnetic field of the sun is behaving. So it is very important to see how the form that it has differs.
You're talking about this being a great opportunity for normal people like me that want to help out. So what kind of help are you looking for? Or, is it more your expert photographers or anybody that's just got a camera that's willing to try to take a picture?
My feeling is everybody. If you're an expert with a camera, you have a star tracker, and you can take pictures of the eclipse, we'll appreciate all that information. But if you are a person going on foot and you have a phone and you take the pictures, we also would like to see all the images.
Is there any special training that people need to have in advance of the eclipse to be able to know how to help y'all out with this movie project?
Yeah, so we have several channels. So there is a website for the Eclipse Mega Movie that is managed by the university, and Sonoma State University. There is another one. We have a Discord channel that people can just come up and make questions and talk between them. And there is a formal training for those who wants to be kind of the masters, if you want, of all of this stuff. And you can see all that information in our website.
Okay, so you said y'all did this. This is the second one you did. What did y'all learn from the 2017 mega movie that y'all made?
In science, we have seen flows, for example. We managed to see some material that is going from the lower layers of the sun up. We also learned that probably we need to do a better job asking people to help us doing science, because the project not only is to take the pictures, the project involves also people to analyze the data, to be part of the data analysis community. So if people are interested to see if there is any coronal mass ejection moving in the corona, then you can do that in this project.
You can find out more about the Eclipse Mega Movie and how you can be a part of it by scanning the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube, or you can go to KWTX.com/degrees of science. Well, back in September 2023, the first U.S. mission to collect a sample from an asteroid was completed, and now scientists are studying those samples. We have more on their findings and what that means for life on Earth after the break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Osiris Rex was the first U.S. mission to collect a sample from an asteroid. The mission was completed back on September 24th of last year, as material from an asteroid named Bennu returned back to Earth. Scientists hope the sample from the asteroid will offer clues to whether asteroids colliding with Earth billions of years ago brought water and other key ingredients for life to Earth. Now, University of Arizona scientists are now hard at work in the lab studying the billion-year-old dirt and dust samples collected, and Catherine Patterson spoke with researchers on what they've discovered so far.
From the moment the Osiris Rex capsule landed safely on Earth, researchers counted down the days until those samples arrived in Tucson.
Opening for the first time the glass slide that we received from the NASA curation in the lab and starting looking at it and having our student look at it for the first time. So it was really thrilling for everyone. It has been a really fun time since then.
The first look at the samples have shown them some surprises.
It's really black. It looked like really dark, like charcoal-looking material. It's very, very fine grained.
Another one of their first discoveries was the large amount of water. Not the kind of water you may think of, but hydrated minerals.
Providing us basically the really ground truth information of what we were expecting to look at.
Haneker says the next step is looking closer at the samples for organic materials that could give them a better roadmap to the building blocks of life. Reporting in Tucson, Catherine Patterson, 13 News.
Well, that's all we have for you on this episode of Weather Extra. We do have a soggy week ahead with multiple chances for rain, so make sure to stay up to date with the forecast. We'll see you again on Weather Extra next weekend.